And so I wanted to start with a story. Let me introduce you to a guy. His name is Marvin. If you want to learn more about him, you can grab the Netflix documentary called Tread. And so Marvin, he's a seasoned man there. He's been around for a while. And like most men in his life, some people did him wrong. And he, rather than forgiving them, he kind of just stacked up one bitterness after another. So he was bitter against some businesses in his town, and he sought justice through the town hall. Didn't feel like he got it. Took his story to the local news agency and felt like they didn't do him justice, so he got more bitter. And he felt like there was one particular woman who did him wrong, and he was bitter against her. So he created this thing called the bulldozer. And he literally put bulletproof glass around it. He surrounded it with cameras, and he put a .50 caliber rifle on it. And he decided to go get vengeance on everybody that he was bitter against. Before he was done, he had done $7 million in damage. He destroyed City Hall. He destroyed the news outlet, and he destroyed that elderly woman's home. He tore them all down. Now, before you cheer, and let's be honest, if the bulldozer was on Craigslist, how many of you would bid on it? Because you'd say, I've got a list of people I could use that for. The point is that at the end, he literally killed himself. He blew his brains out. And he decided that the last act of his life and the great legacy for his life would be bitterness. That he was going to finish at the line of bitterness. And they created a Netflix documentary on him called Tread. And the point is this, before we talk about you, just think about men that you know, fathers, grandfathers, older men. How many of you know a man who's just bitter? He's just jaded, kind of broken, kind of sour, kind of surly. If you're bitter, you start to get crazy. You start to get crazy. You start to really, in your mind, go to very dark places, and eventually in your life, you go to dark places. And so what I want to talk about is when all is said and done, I say this all the time, when all of history comes to its conclusion, there's only two cultures, there's heaven and hell. And you and I, men, we live in the middle between heaven and hell. And every day the decisions we make either invite heaven down or pull hell up. If we choose bitterness and unforgiveness, we're literally pulling the culture of hell up into our life. And hell is where all the unforgiven people go. And so if you're pulling unforgiveness or bitterness up into your life, you're literally pulling up the culture of hell and Satan and demons and chaos and darkness and self-destruction. If when you're wronged as a man, you choose to forgive, you're inviting the culture of heaven down. Heaven is where all the forgiven people are. And so the essential culture of heaven is one of forgiveness. And the reason I think this is so hard for men is as we live our life, true or false, we get taken advantage of, we get used and abused, we get cheated on, we literally get taken advantage of, we get screwed. Some of you, your life has been a series of unjust deeds against you. Some of you, it started with your parents and they weren't good to you, or dad was violent and abusive or absent. You've had girlfriends cheat on you or betray you. Maybe you married a woman and that ended up in divorce, or right now it's in a very painful place. You've worked for employers who did you wrong, didn't compensate you, didn't promote you, didn't honor you or respect you. Some of you have served in ministries and churches and you feel like the way you got treated was really not healthy and helpful. Some of you in your friendships, you realize they were just using you and taking advantage of you. They didn't really care about you. And some of you, your own children, they've gutted you, they've betrayed you, they've abandoned you, they've ignored you. And the only time they call you is when they want money from you. And as a man, there is this sense of justice that rises up in us. And I know we're not supposed to say this in our culture. In our culture, everybody's a victim except for the men. But men are oftentimes the greatest victims of all because it is women and children and employees that depend on us and they take advantage of us. And as men, if we have a sense of justice in us, there's this frustration like, that's not right, that's not fair. And something in a man, tell me if I'm right, doesn't like to lose. We just don't like to lose. I've never met a man who's like, man, I really hope I can really get better at losing. I've never seen a man with that as his aspirational goal. But when people take advantage of you, or the girl cheats on you, or the marriage crumbles, or the children walk away, or the employer takes advantage, or the client doesn't pay their debt and now you've got cash flow problems, there's something in us that just has this boiling sense of rage and injustice. And so Christianity is about two things. It's about what we do when we sin and what we do when we're sinned against. And the problem is too much Christian teaching only focuses on what you do when they sin. It doesn't focus on what you do when you sin. When they sin against you, you forgive them. And when you sin against them, you repent. We tend to know a lot more about repenting of our sin than forgiving their sin.
Howdy, Pastor Mark here. Thanks for viewing the clip. And if you'd like the entire sermon, we've got it ready to go.